underwater combat, the clutch claw, wire bugs, and oh no. We've seen quite the variety of gameplay mechanics from Capcom in an effort to keep Monster Hunter fresh, and as the expansion announcement for Wilds draws near, I thought it would be fun to look at the gameplay features from various Monster Hunter games and attempt to gauge how they would feel in Wilds. Because who knows, we might see some of these again in the expansion. We'll be starting with 3 Ultimate, because a lot of the additions we see in Freedom Unite and earlier are all things that are now core pieces of Monster Hunter gameplay. I'll be rating each mechanic on a tier list of how well I think each of them would fit into Wilds. Do you have any favorite mechanics that you would like to see back? Or are you just like me and hope Rampages never see the light of day again? So, let's dive in with 3 Ultimate. What a classic to start with. As much as wounds and focus mode get talked about a bit negatively online, underwater gameplay in 3 Ultimate is still one of the most controversial topics in Monster Hunter to this day. I actually picked up a Wii U a couple years ago specifically to play 3 Ultimate and Xenoblade, but in order to record my own gameplay, I've had to use other means. And honestly, yeah, the controls underwater are rough. But after a couple of hunts, it's really not that bad. I think your weapon choice has the strongest influence towards your experience underwater, as certain weapons can move much quicker with smoother combos, but that can be said for Monster Hunter in general. I do think the idea of chasing monsters in and out of the water does a lot to enrich the gameplay experience overall though, as seeing a monster's strength in the water is really interesting and helps build the personality behind each of these monsters. Does it feel great getting laser beamed from a mile away or getting gobbled by a gobble because your character didn't swim in the right direction due to the wonky camera controls? No, not necessarily. However, I can't deny that it is satisfying to at least have a chance underwater at busting the crystals on the back of a Lagiacrus or shattering Gobel's lantern. Having these underwater sections help make the maps feel large, more realistic, and lived in by these creatures. There's a lot of flavor that gets added in, and that Monster Hunter flavor is kind of missing nowadays. Still, seeing a modern spin on underwater combat with Lagiacrus and Wilds was a lot of fun, and it didn't seem to me that the reception towards this underwater section was all that negative. At least outside of seeing players requesting a way to skip it entirely after seeing it once. Oh, and quick honorable mention here would be the free hunts in Mogul Woods, where you could roam around and hunt whatever monsters happen to be available in the map. This would reset on quest completion and was a good way to farm resource points. So what do you think? Could we see Capcom bring back underwater combat in its entirety? I would put underwater combat at B tier. It wouldn't be totally out of place since they already kind of brought it back in Wilds, but they'd have to save a lot of the roster for aquatic monsters, which would lessen the variety, I think, a bit too much. Overall, it doesn't seem worth it for Capcom to bring this back, and it would definitely continue to split the player base. Okay, Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate is a fantastic game. So much of the gameplay features of 4 Ultimate are now fundamentally baked into Monster Hunter. Jumping attacks, mounting, climbing, and of course, the Insect Glaive and Charge Blade. Frenzy and Gore Magala are also only missing in one game since 4U. You could even say, while not exactly the same, Apex monsters began in 4U and did make an appearance again in Rise. So what's left? Well, I'd say the expeditions in the Everwood, guild quests, and relic gear, all of which basically tie together. The Everwood was a dynamic free hunt zone similar to Mogul Woods, but the Everwood had randomized layouts, items, and monsters. Expeditions in the Everwood can sometimes provide you with a guild quest upon completion, and these guild quests would level up after each successful hunt, increasing in difficulty and rewards. At higher levels, these guild quests could also reward you with relic weapons, which have randomized stats. Also, relic armor that have randomized skills. This was the endgame, and I'm sure there are 4U vets already reminiscing about how painful it was hunting a level 140 Apex Rajang. I mean, honestly, Ardean weapons exist now, so I'd be surprised if Capcom would consider bringing relic weapons back. And relic armor would be a sinister combo with Ardean weapons if Capcom were to continue on with them. I haven't personally interacted with relic weapons or armor yet, as I'm still pushing it to high rank, but just from what I've read about them, I hope they don't make a comeback. But a dynamic free hunt system similar to the Everwood? That sounds pretty sweet. Basically, this entire section of the video is all just to say that 4U is 100% goated, and if you haven't played it, take it from me, and I haven't even put that many hours into it yet, you really should. Guild quests themselves aren't super unique, and hunts are already randomized enough through investigations, so I won't rate those. Relic gear is an easy C tier. More randomized gear would not be fun alongside Ardean weapons, and there's no promise we won't see those in the expansion. The idea of the Everwood is an A tier though. Dynamic hunts sound like the marketing for Wilds, just going around a map hunting whatever showed up. You can do that in Wilds, but it's worse than just using investigations. So something like the Everwood with actual good rewards could push that dynamic hunt idea into a better light. Alright, y'all are gonna have to bear with me on this one, because Generations is where I started my Monster Hunter journey, and I absolutely adore this game. If there is anything from Generations that would be a treat to see in Wilds, it would be Hunter styles and Hunter arts. I do think Hunter arts may feel a touch too flashy or arcadey in a game like Wilds, just imagining how they would look. However, Wilds can be quite flashy at times already, so while I'm sure more attacks will come to each weapon as part of the expansion, giving us a couple Hunter arts with a cooldown to play around with could help deepen the gameplay even further. Hunter styles, on the other hand, could be a more grounded approach of refreshing gameplay. Guild style being the default, and bringing back Aerial, Adept, and maybe Striker if we would have Hunter arts back as well. This is clearly a long shot, but if Capcom really leans into the craziness and truly makes Master Rank a difficult experience, why not full send with Hunter styles and arts? Make Monster Hunter Frontier blush at how insane the endgame clips will look in Master Rank for Wilds. Honorable mention here would be the Deviant Monsters. That's an easy way to spice up the roster and add some more challenge into the game, all while bringing back some fan favorites. Please Capcom, do not forget the frog. And the most notable mechanic from Generations Ultimate would have been the layered armor, or armor fusion as it was called. But as we know, that's been a main feature of the previous few games. GU also introduced a lot of new monsters, G-Rank, and 2 more Hunter styles, but we've already covered styles in this video, and we're definitely receiving new monsters and a new rank in the Wilds expansion. All that to say, GU won't have its own section in this video, but again, if you've not played Generations Ultimate and you enjoy Monster Hunter, this is a fantastic game to play that is loaded with content. Hunter styles and Hunter arts get an easy S tier for me. I can absolutely see all the different weapons getting some over-the-top Hunter arts, with Hunter styles to help add more replayability. Deviants get an A. Almost seems like a no-brainer, to be honest, but I just wouldn't want the system to bloat the monster roster too much if it takes away from more unique monsters being added.
The new world.
Alright, on to the new world. Being a game designed on a similar scale, I would say Monster Hunter World has the most in common with Wilds, at least compared to the rest of this list. But man, there's something missing in Wilds, and that's monster tracking. Picking up tracks, leveling up your research on monsters, actually feeling like the scout flies were a real thing and not just a hand wave to explain why monsters appeared on your map. I miss this. It's the little details that help complete an experience. And this is exactly what tracking helped provide. There was also a sense of progression here. Was it your first time hunting a monster? Then you needed to find a good amount of tracks in order for the scoutflies to obtain a trail. But a monster you've hunted a few times already? All you need is a quick track on the move to immediately obtain its location. It also gave you something to do while you were traversing the maps, which was on foot. I've mentioned this in my previous video, and maybe this is a hot take, but I think Capcom should somehow withhold secrets from us in the expansion, at least in the beginning. Allow us to actually explore the new maps a few times before we can start zooming around on a mount. The little auto-moving sections on the secrets are neat, and when I'm grinding at endgame, I do just want to go, but overall, I want the maps to feel big again, and making us walk through them would help do that. However, there's like a 0% chance that secrets will get sidelined. And adding monster tracking into a game through an expansion sounds weird. This is one of those things that really need to be a mechanic from the start of a base game. This one is C tier. Man, Iceborne was so hype when it came out. I bought this dang expansion once on PS4 and again on PC. I would 100% do that again. Yet here we are with another controversial feature, the Clutch Claw. Right out the gate, I'll just say that I feel the Clutch Claw stagger or clagger is much worse than the Clutch Claw itself. Similar to underwater combat, tenderizing to me only felt as bad as your weapon made it. And as a hammer main, I was lucky enough to have combos linking directly into the Clutch Claw, which made tenderizing a natural part of my gameplay. But I know there's other weapons that felt all the clunk that the Claw had added. Wall bangs were also introduced alongside the Claw, which would send monsters crashing into a wall for a knockdown. I liked wall bangs a lot, and being able to force an rage state by spinning a monster before wall banging allowed skills like Agitator to shine even more. But would Capcom bring this back? Truthfully, I think this could work decently well with wounds, maybe even creating them after latching onto a monster enough times. And we already have focus mode, which is a smoother version of aiming your slinger. However, you would almost have to limit the ability to latch onto a monster somehow, because otherwise players would just spam the claw to spawn more wounds. But the new Lagiacrus underwater section did essentially have us using a Clutch Claw. Alongside tenderizing, the claw would compete too much with wounds, and major changes would have to occur for it to somewhat work in Wilds, so it probably isn't worth the effort by Capcom. This one is C tier. Before we move on though, let's talk about the guiding lands. It took a bit of time to warm up to this when Iceborne first came out, as well as a few updates to iron out some issues. Leveling up the different regions and managing their levels was a bit annoying, however I loved unlocking new monsters at the higher levels. Fighting a brute Tigrex for the first time was pretty sweet. Same with Stygians and Ogre. In the end, I vastly preferred this style of grinding over farming Kulf Taroth and Safi'jiiva. Similarly to the Everwood from 4U or Mogawoods from 3U, some type of dynamic hunting area would work really well in Wilds. So, Guiding Lands is A tier. Yeah, not to start Rise off on a bad note, but Rampages are not coming back. That would be a travesty, and I think Capcom is aware of that. My disdain for Rampages is actually what inspired one of my very first videos on this channel. I do think it's an interesting idea, and is a callback to siege battles, which is a style of quest that's been around for a long time in Monster Hunter. But ultimately, the rampages in Rise fell so flat on its face that Capcom started leaving them behind throughout the title updates, and completely abandoned rampages once Sunbreak released. It also did not help that Apex monsters were initially locked behind them. Rise was really fun as a base game, but also a bit of a stinker compared to the rest of the series. Rampages are easily in a tier of their own, D tier. With that out of the way, let's talk about wire bugs. Wire bugs themselves probably aren't coming back anytime soon, if at all, because if so, I think MHGU would have to make another video. Please come back, big dog. Instead, the mechanics that are tied to the wire bugs, Silkbind and switch skills, would be an easy fit for Wilds. So even though Silkbind skills use wire bugs in Rise, they could just be set on a cooldown. Switch skills, even more so, would fit really nicely into Wilds combat. Give us a couple of new attacks and let us choose between them, offering various playstyles for all the weapons just like they did in Rise and Sunbreak. Player agency would go up, and there's more room for skill expression through these different playstyles. And the addition of active skills, while maybe a touch too flashy, is an option if Capcom wants to lean into that frontier style of combat. I would say wire bugs are C tier, and switch skills are S tier. And here we are. Just like Iceborne, Sunbreak is so good. It completely transformed Rise for the better. This section will be more about an endgame system than anything else, because the endgame that involved curious crafting and afflicted monsters is still one of my favorite grinds in Monster Hunter, period. At the same time, it's crazy how similar and different curious crafting and Ardian weapons are. They each involve RNG, but Ardian weapons feel so much worse, and in my opinion, that's because curious crafting is simply upgrading your current crafted weapon to a higher level of power. Ardian weapons throw crafted weapons completely into the garbage, on top of having completely randomized weapon skills, which in Wilds are grouped differently than armor skills. Afflicted materials for curious crafting also involve the entire monster roster, which is a massive W. So if Capcom were to bring something like this back, with, say, allowing us to transcend our weapons, like we already can with armor pieces, that would be phenomenal. I also think afflicted monsters help add replayability to the endgame loop. I would rather choose from a group of monsters that I need to grind if I need specific afflicted materials, instead of just farming one or two monsters on repeat. Now, the curious crafting and afflicted monsters were directly tied to the flagship monster, Malzena. Would we really see him so soon after Sunbreak? Yeah, probably not, but this isn't necessarily about monsters as it is the mechanics in these games. Weapon transcendence could easily become what curious weapon crafting was, and they could even expand on armor transcendence to add a few armor skills. Am I crazy and this is a good idea, or am I just being a Sunbreak fanboy? In my mind, this would help fix Ardian weapons by boosting crafted weapons up, and if they can find another way to keep the full monster roster worthy of hunting, then we got an expansion, boys. Curious crafting and afflicted monsters is S tier. And that's that. The major gameplay features that are still unique to older Monster Hunter games that could get brought back in some form as part of the Wilds expansion. I have no idea how long this video will turn out, so if you made it this far, then write "you're a stinky Kongalala" in the comments. I really appreciate you watching. I've been struck by fluency, and I'll see you in the next video. Expansion announcement next week, maybe?